In a mansion where power ruled and arrogance thrived, a maid's son was invited to play a simple game, chess. To the wealthy guests, it was meant as a cruel joke, nothing more than a spectacle to humiliate a child. But what they didn't know was that this quiet boy held a mind sharper than anyone in the room. And when the first piece moved across the board, the night took a turn no one could have imagined. By the end, pride would be shattered. A millionaire's laughter would die in his throat, and a hidden genius would rise from the shadows. Stay with this story until the very end, because the checkmate that silenced the room is one you will never forget. In the heart of a sprawling city stood the Whitmore estate, a mansion that seemed more like a monument than a home. Its golden gates and marble pillars signaled wealth, influence, and untouchable privilege. Within its walls, decisions were made that rippled across the community, often leaving invisible scars on those who worked in its shadow. Among the staff was Evelyn, a quiet, diligent black maid who had worked for the Whitmore family for years. To her, the job was survival, steady pay, though laced with condescension. The mansion sparkled with laughter and polished surfaces, but beneath the grandeur was a culture of subtle cruelty. Workers were spoken to, not with. Evelyn endured it with dignity, always protecting her young son, Marcus, from the bitterness she tasted daily. Marcus, only 12, carried a shy but curious spirit, one that Evelyn nurtured at home. While other children spent hours outside playing, Marcus was often bent over a chessboard Evelyn had bought secondhand, his mind working tirelessly to solve puzzles no one else around him could understand. The Whitmores never noticed him until one afternoon, when Marcus accompanied his mother to work, clutching a book of chess openings. That small detail, an overlooked child with a battered board tucked under his arm, would soon ignite a chain of events that none in the mansion could have foreseen. The Whitmore household often entertained guests who delighted in subtle humiliations masked as humor. When Marcus lingered in the corner one evening while his mother polished silver, one of the millionaire's friends spotted him. Noticing the chessboard under his arm, she smirked and whispered loudly enough for the room to hear that perhaps the maid's boy should challenge the master of the house. Laughter erupted, not from kindness, but mockery. To them, the very idea was absurd. A child of a maid sitting across the table from a man like Charles Whitmore was entertainment at its cruelest. Charles, known for his arrogance, played along. He was an amateur chess enthusiast, proud of his expensive carved ivory set, though never truly skilled. He waved Marcus over with a patronizing smile, expecting clumsy moves and quick defeat. Guests leaned forward, glasses of champagne in hand, eager for the spectacle. Evelyn froze in the doorway, horror flooding her. She wanted to protect her son from ridicule, but Marcus's small hands were already resting on the polished table, his eyes scanning the board. To Marcus, this was no joke. The pieces weren't toys. They were worlds of strategy, possibility, and silent conversation. While the adults expected a performance of failure, Marcus prepared for something else entirely: to let his mind speak in the only language he trusted. The game began with laughter echoing across the room. Charles Whitmore, puffing with self-importance, moved his pawn forward with exaggerated flair, as though announcing a grand performance. Guests clapped sarcastically, treating the match like theater. Marcus, however, leaned in quietly, studying the board with the calm intensity of someone far older than his years. He responded not with hesitation, but precision, an opening line straight out of advanced theory that Charles had never encountered. At first, the adults found it amusing. They chuckled at Marcus's serious expression, dismissing it as childish imitation. But within minutes, the rhythm of the room shifted. Whitmore frowned, realizing his opponent wasn't fumbling randomly. He was setting traps. Pawns moved like soldiers on a mission. Bishops cut across the board with intent, and Marcus's knight leapt with elegance, cornering Charles into positions he didn't recognize. The laughter softened into murmurs. Guests leaned closer, whispering, their amusement fading into uneasy curiosity. Evelyn's hands trembled as she polished the same goblet over and over, her heart caught between fear of her son's humiliation and awe at his quiet brilliance. By the 15th move, it was no longer a joke. Charles Whitmore, sweating slightly, realized he was being outplayed by a boy he had invited to the table only for mockery. The smirk on his face faltered, replaced by something he hadn't felt in years, the sting of being underestimated. The room grew eerily quiet, broken only by the faint clink of glass and the scraping of pieces against wood. Marcus's small hands moved with unwavering certainty, his gaze never lifting from the board. For him, it wasn't about showing off. It was instinct. A world where strategy mattered more than status, where ideas conquered arrogance. Whitmore, on the other hand, grew restless. His every move was shadowed by regret, as Marcus anticipated him like a seasoned opponent. The boy wasn't just playing the game, he was reading it several moves ahead. Each piece Charles lost was more than wood. It was pride crumbling in front of his peers. Guests began shifting uncomfortably in their seats. What was supposed to be an evening of ridicule was turning into something else, an unmasking. They saw Charles, the powerful millionaire, flustered by the son of his maid. Some whispered excuses for him, claiming he was distracted or letting the boy win. But the truth hung in the air like a heavy curtain. Marcus wasn't being allowed anything. He was earning it. Evelyn, still standing near the doorway, fought tears. For years, she had endured slights, invisibility, and the sting of condescension. But in that moment, watching her son command respect without saying a word, she felt a flicker of pride strong enough to silence every insult she had swallowed. As the game neared its climax, tension thickened in the room. Charles leaned forward, his once relaxed posture now tight with urgency. His brow furrowed, beads of sweat forming at his temple. He searched desperately for an escape, scanning the board as though he might will a miracle into existence. But Marcus had built a web too tight. His rooks dominated the file, his queen danced into position, and every attempt at counterattack crumbled under the weight of preparation. It wasn't just a game, it was a lesson. Every move Marcus made exposed not only Charles's weakness on the board, but the arrogance that had brought him there. When Marcus finally whispered checkmate with his quiet action of placing the queen, the silence was absolute. The mighty Charles Whitmore sat frozen, his king cornered, his pride defeated. Guests who had once laughed nervously now exchanged uneasy glances. What had started as a cruel joke had become a public revelation. Brilliance knows no social class, and arrogance is no shield against truth. For Marcus, it was just another game, a puzzle solved. For his mother, it was vindication. And for Charles, it was humiliation disguised in the delicate arrangement of wooden pieces. The guests began clapping softly, unsure if it was for the child's skill or to ease the tension suffocating the room. Charles forced a smile, but his eyes betrayed him. His pride had been wounded not by a rival businessman, not by a peer, but by a 12-year-old boy whose mother he had barely acknowledged as human. Some guests, to their credit, approached Marcus with genuine admiration. They asked him questions about his strategy, astonished at his composure. Evelyn stood taller than she ever had, watching her son receive the respect she had been denied for years. But she also knew the weight of such moments. Respect, once forced, could turn into resentment. Charles dismissed the gathering earlier than usual, claiming fatigue. But his silence spoke volumes. His power had been challenged in a way he could not spin or laugh away. In the quiet halls of his mansion, he now carried the memory of defeat, tied to the image of the boy who had exposed his arrogance. For Marcus, however, the night planted a seed. He realized that his gift was not small, not something to be hidden within the walls of their modest home. It was something that could carry him beyond the gilded halls of Whitmore's estate, into a future where brilliance was not defined by wealth or race, but by the power of the mind. The story of that night lingered long after the champagne glasses were emptied and the guests went home. Whispers spread quietly among the city's elite. Some dismissed it as an odd evening's entertainment, while others couldn't shake the image of a boy who dismantled privilege with intellect alone. For Evelyn, it was the beginning of hope. She saved every extra dollar she could to buy books for Marcus, to nurture the gift she now saw in full bloom. For Marcus, the board became more than a game. It became a symbol. Each pawn was a reminder of where he started, each victory a step toward a life his mother had only dreamed of. The Whitmores never invited him again, but they didn't need to. That single match was enough to prove that genius can come from anywhere, that dignity cannot be silenced, and that arrogance often digs its own grave. And so, a millionaire's cruel joke became the spark that lit a boy's destiny. A maid's son, dismissed as background, had commanded the room with nothing more than thought and patience. In the silence of checkmate, a truth resounded louder than wealth or power. Brilliance belongs to no single race, no single class. It belongs to those who dare to rise. And maybe the real question we should ask is this: how many hidden geniuses are still waiting, overlooked in the corners of rooms where no one thinks to look?